Yeah, my name's Terence Siddles, so I've been part of SOCOTEC UK now for close to 6 years. Got a little agenda and we'll run through that and through the slides. So initially I just want to tell you about what we do. So we have over 200 different kind of testing and inspection services that we provide, and this is provided by accredited professionals that we have across various teams. We provide over 7 million different types of tests. We have 30 different sites. We operate primarily out of the UK. We employ over 1,600 people, and we have in the thousands in terms of clients. We acquire companies yearly now. Over the past couple of years, we've acquired a few different companies, and one of the benefits of using Fliplet is we can look to see how they can adopt some of the applications we've built previously, or look at new opportunities. It gives us a learning platform as well in terms of what they currently use and what we could possibly adopt. So, as Ian mentioned, Dale joined us last year, and as of April, his plan was always to utilise Fliplet with us, and historically we had quite a small team. We had a lot of mobile workers, and we're talking in the thousands in terms of mobile devices out there, but they weren't being utilised. They were great email devices and communication devices, but we didn't do a lot with them. We had very minimal numbers of apps that were being utilised for our systems. I think we had 4 or 5 in total. Development costs, because of that, and our development was internal, it led to quite a lot of costs for developing new applications, and it would be quite cumbersome to build those and roll them out. So users always basically found their own way of implementing solutions, whether it be third-party apps or benefits from systems they have, and added complexity for us from a support perspective when there was an issue. In terms of the app maturity, as I mentioned, we had only around 5 or so apps that were live and built. They were native to Android, which was an issue because 10% of our estate's actually iOS. And from a sales perspective, in terms of the services we provide, our BDMs were iOS users, so we couldn't really present to them what we had. And if they were on an Android device, and cross-compatibility and device agnostics was a big thing. So, bearing in mind, taking all that into consideration, it was really slow and frustrating to deploy updates to apps, and on average we'd take 8 months to build and deliver a single application. Fast forward to May, and with Ian and Joe and Fliplet's help, where we implemented the platform as a trial, we built, with their guidance, Fliplet built 5 applications with us, and over a 3-month period. And it was really to demonstrate the proof of concept that we could reduce development time, have this rapid approach and fast kind of change in agile requirements, as Andrew mentioned, and just to make sure that the dev model and our authentication would work, because a lot of people really like the idea of logging into an app and having a lot of fields pre-populated, which is quite simple, but it can be quite tricky based on the technologies you use within any company. They were successfully built. Additionally, it kind of meant that the developers didn't have to think too much around the design of the apps. This is where my role comes into it. So I'm a business relationship manager, and my kind of premise is I go out to either our internal business or just recently clients. We look at what they want to achieve, and then I can help design that without the need of a developer having to think about how it needs to be designed. They can just help with some of the coding principles or kind of the more technological difficulties they need to implement. It was key that we could identify users in terms of the apps they use and incorporate that information so that we can record what they've logged and be able to provide some BI for that kind of functionality. There are a number of case studies we have, so this is kind of the bit that's probably the most important. We have built over the past 12 months around 20 applications, and they are live out in our business. A couple of those are actually with clients as well, and I'll go into those a bit later. But things like the NDM app, nuclear density moisture, they have the ability to give a technician the format to record results, create tests, create samples. It can give them real-time calculations, which are part of our accreditations, whether it be UCAS or other kind of affiliations we have. But the point is, it can give the client a result there and then on the site. A lot of our difficulties or clients' requirements were to get this information quickly, and a lot of it was paper-based before, and they would have to wait and it'd have to go away and be vetted and brought back. We can give them real-time calculations as an indication to the test that we performed there and then. So they found that really beneficial, and kind of it's a good time with the client to show that we're trying to improve our turnaround to them. As you can see, there's the key features there that I mentioned. Gives us the hierarchy of tests, and the biggest thing is the remote export of data. So internally we can push data from Fliplet apps directly into a share or as an email PDF, any kind of format generation that's typically used across businesses. And then also we can talk about how we can pull information back in, as you mentioned, through APIs or the kind of how we would link servers. Health and safety is one of the first apps I actually built. So when I started my new role and undertook Fliplet, that was last April. So I've kind of had the benefit of looking at how Fliplet's been implemented across the past 12 months, whilst also undertaking kind of a new role. And Dale's kind of ethos was everyone should be able to build an app. It doesn't matter whether they're a developer or not. Within our IT department, everyone should have the capability and be able to use Fliplet. So the health and safety was the first one we built. I can see one already, so I could take a photo of a trip hazard, but I won't. I just identified it. But the good thing about this is that this app's really kind of a simple, gives you some sort of training in terms of what types of hazards there are. It gives you the ability to log it. It incorporates pictures and signatures if it needs to have signatures. It can produce it as a PDF on the end, and that can be emailed out or it can be saved. From an internal perspective, being audited on documentation, you don't want boxes and boxes of paperwork that people have to sift through. It can all be digital now. So we're undertaking quite a lot of digital transformation in terms of replacing paper in our business. Most important thing with the health and safety app is that it can potentially save lives and prevent injuries. So we had to put that in there, but it is the most important thing. Another one is a fleet mileage app. So this one as well might be something of interest. This gives we have it with 750 users in the business. It's fully live. It has the ability to automatically know what car they're driving, and it's already assigned in the system. It can automatically calculate the mileage they've entered from start and end. It will pre-populate a new journey with their last odometer reading, so the last mileage they logged. It sends all this over to finance in an Excel or a digital sheet. They can then do any other reporting, which we're also looking at kind of adding some more intelligence in the back end of that. But the idea is that it gives all these technicians and all these users out on site the ability to log all this digitally. Before it was all paper. And it's all about the speed of this data. So before it was taking days, weeks, months, or even just not being returned. But now we have the ability to turn this around, same day, instantly. Again, they also has the roadside assistance in terms of it will know which kind of provider of car they have, which rental company. It can direct them automatically to the correct number, highway codes in there from a safety perspective as well. In terms of our internal efficiency, we're also working on expense management. Again, this might be something that's of interest. This currently is in its 6th week of development, I think, and it's almost ready for testing. It should be ready by the end of this week. The idea is it just records your expenses. You can take photos, it captures signatures, it asks for approvals. One of the biggest struggles is having all the approval in place, and that it can identify people to sign things off. And our finance department had identified that the biggest problem they had was people signing expense sheets. So we can actually target notifications to them, and they can then just approve it digitally without any kind of paper trail. Again, this can produce a PDF, it can produce data to send into in one of our finance systems for payroll, things like that. So one of the biggest things is that it's, in comparison to the likes of Concur or other expense apps out there isn't really a quite high licensing cost for that because of using the Fliplet model. So it's quite important that we can utilise Fliplet to its full capabilities. Speaking about the client applications, so we've built, of those 20, we've built quite a lot for internal. One of the biggest ones that I've also been working on outside of that is one for a large construction company. They were undergoing some digital transformation themselves. Again, paper-based kind of initial requests. They were submitting jobs and giving us calls and there was 3 copies of paper going around everywhere between either the samples of material that was being looked at or for audited purposes. This actually allows a client to be able to download the SOCOTEC UK app. It gives them the brochure as well as kind of our services and offices, and click to dial buttons and click to email as well as social media. But one of the biggest things is it has a services link which enables them to log in and use some of the suite that we provided for them. This all actually started from just transferring one sheet into a digital form, and now it's gone into like a suite of applications where they can manage their own data, they can add their own projects, add their own users into it, and they can look after it themselves, which gives them kind of confidence that they can manage it the way they want to without us having to dictate that to them. But it gives them kind of some real added benefit of being able to turn around things without relying on us too much, and we're providing them a massive service. In terms of kind of positive information being transferred around, we've had a couple of other clients in the same area in the industry contact us about this, and we've not approached them about it. So, word of mouth does travel, and that's something we're looking to kind of, this is the rapid development and rapid delivery in terms of, it starts becoming successful and all of a sudden it can just kind of explode and become, really big. So again, as I mentioned, over 20 applications in the business. We have a singular application that produces 30 odd forms at the minute. It can produce them as PDFs or as data files, whatever's kind of required for that department. And this was something that was mentioned earlier in terms of, do we have one app that houses all this, or do we have multiple apps that do kind of similar things, and does it become a bit unmanageable? And that's something we thought about before and realised that actually we can have one app that's split out across our different divisions and gives them all the forms, and they can search for whichever one they require, or they can be directed to the one they need straight away. Again, Andrew mentioned about the styling, and he wished that they had probably thought about it a bit earlier on in the journey. That's something we looked at while the 5 apps were being built, and we kind of had some consultancy around what we should do in terms of brand alignment and making sure that these apps represent SOCOTEC UK and look like SOCOTEC UK, because that's what we're building them for. So we'd already decided on the styling and the branding initially, so that when those first 5 apps were complete, we knew which path we were taking and where we were headed. And that means these other 20 applications that have been built all have this consistency, and there's no kind of real need to go back and look through that and make any amendments or changes. So that was a big benefit, and obviously we included the marketing and communications department because they kind of set the trend in terms of what we can and can't do. So it was good to get those guys on board. The client application was the one previously. We have a report generation tool in the background that we've built. This produces all these high quality PDF reports I mentioned, so all this transformation of paper-based forms into digital. This report generation tool is a back-end service that we've produced, and it's a really powerful kind of capability, and again relates to the fact that you produce one report digitally for someone, they then want 8 other things they've thought of that need changing, or another department has the same kind of 20 odd reports to do. So it's something that has got high potential and a lot of power. And one of the biggest things is the business confidence. They we mentioned before about it taking up to 8 months to produce an app. Now we can do this rapid kind of deployment, and there's one thing I can remember even starting in this role last year was we sat with a team and they were talking about digitising these reports, and this lady had 8 different reports on the table, and she was talking about consolidating some of them. That was great. The first one she wanted me to work on, I'd actually built data capture in Fliplet while she was talking and showed it to her at the end of the meeting, and she was like, really impressed that we could deliver something so quickly. Obviously it wasn't the finished article, there was changes, and we had the report generation tool and things like that, but she could see progress, within an hour. And she was just mesmerised that this could happen, and now she has 8 different reports, and there's another 20 to do, for example, and it's just all these this kind of business engagement has just gone through the roof over the past 12 months because they know they can get something quickly. There's a range of applications you can see there. Again, they all kind of look consistent in terms of the colouring. So where are we going? We can build apps with confidence, and as I mentioned before, it's not just about someone, either myself or a developer, being able to build apps. It's anyone in our department can build them. We even have our service desk guys. One of those has taken the initiative to build a service desk related app, it'll push data into our asset management system, but they've taken that on themselves and the initiative to try and utilise the platform. That's because it's really simple to use, and I can vouch for that, having used it myself. And I'm not a developer, I'm not a coder, but I know code now, and it's actually quite interesting. as much as I hate to admit it, I actually quite like code. So yeah, it's really quite an interesting thing. We're able to scale our development, as I mentioned. You produce one thing, and then 20 other people ask about it because they've seen it, and they want to get involved. We can scale that development up quite quickly, and that helps with the different templates that we can make templates, or we can duplicate apps through Fliplet, even though it's for a different area. It can be the same framework. So it really is helpful to be able to kind of scale that up with both our onshore and offshore resources. Again, we can offer the solutions and the apps to clients or to prospective people that are interested. We can produce these templates for anyone, and we can effectively sell them. So there's a lot on offer that we have, and with our on and offshore development teams, this rapid application development kind of coming into force now, to the point where I think we're probably stage 2 or stage 3 at the cycle in terms of we're hitting that glass ceiling of let's push this outside of the company, and what can we do with that? And it's becoming really interesting. There's a lot of client engagement from at least our current clients and potentially prospective ones. Dale has put some learnings on there. I've done quite a bit of talking as well, but as you can see, mobile application platforms is a must. And I can see that now over the last 12 months, the journey we've been on, that it is, just based on how much we've managed to achieve. App branding early, good reiteration, good point there. You don't want to have to rework multiple apps because you've not decided on the branding and the consistency of how the app should look. We'd only ever consider native development if we're going out to a much wider market of millions of users. As I mentioned, we're in the thousands in terms of users and devices, a couple of thousand devices. So, we wouldn't ever really look at native development just specifically for one OS, unless it was a really big thing. Always make sure you have a mature project pipeline process. So we do utilise the agile methodology in terms of projects and iterations of developments. Things change, and you have to rapidly kind of embrace that. But our kind of project process was pretty well structured, and it didn't take much tweaking to align that to the capability of Fliplet and this kind of dynamically changing requirements and rapidly producing things. But as you mentioned, each BRM has a Fliplet knowledge, so there are 4 of us in total in our organisation, and we all have had hands in Fliplet. We've all built apps. They have the ability to prototype. From my personal experience, I don't like to wireframe things. I just prefer to build the initial concept, because 9 times out of 10 it turns out that people are quite happy with that because they've gone from paper to an app. So they don't really always know what they want from a digital capability perspective. They just want to be able to see something. So I find that building the initial framework just seems to work really well, and actually you've already got it there then. It just requires any further development if there's kind of additional work to do. And we all are motivated by delivery. It is in our interest to use it because it gives me the opportunity to meet new people, meet new clients, internal or external, and understand our business further, which is a good thing to work towards. Business case blockers. So costs for small applications are significantly lower now. Thank you to Ian and to Fliplet. It's just so much more simpler to say, and further down in the second point there, the same lady who I built this app for this form for within an hour, it turned out they were spending 12k a quarter on official kind of paper that we've now replaced. So the cost saving of that alone has paid for this multiple times over. And until you realise that, you don't understand actually how good this can be in terms of from a business perspective. And as we mentioned, 20 of those apps, I think half of those currently replace paper. So there is a cost there in terms of stationery already, without even thinking about admin time and returning data back to the business or pulling it out of a system automatically. We do automate quite a lot of data now, so our admin time, is significantly reducing, in those areas. And one of the biggest things is technical teams won't like it. So the IT departments, the purest developers, they think it's kind of encroaching in their workspace. They're kind of getting concerned, well, what am I going to be doing if I'm not, if I'm not working on development? You have to kind of battle through that, and Dale's probably better placed to discuss this in terms of the discussions he's had. We've only scaled up, we've not scaled down because of Fliplet, and I think that's an important point to make. If it's done correctly, there isn't a threat there, there's just opportunity. And we've scaled up with an offshore team rather than an onshore, and we've retained that knowledge in-house. And from my point of view, they help me really quickly. I want to do something code related that I don't know. They'll help me do that, and I'll learn from that and utilise that next time. But it is a concern that I think most businesses will probably end up going through. But rest assured, in the right way, they won't necessarily see it as a threat long term. And if anything, they have the flexibility now, or at least the time to be able to focus on some of the larger in-house projects that require an on-site presence, because they're not flitting between lots of different changes to making apps. I can do that. Even potentially someone in the business could do that if we really wanted to go that far and empower the business to be able to make their own changes. Not that we would just yet, but certain users might actually benefit from being able to do that. And then, again, the scope to enhance and integrate systems that, they require good technical skills, and that's where the developers come into it, and educate them so that they want to be a part of the platform and not thinking there's what's going to happen to, now that we've implemented something so simple, what am I going to do? We've used their knowledge, and, we're building a lot of different systems in the back end to complement Fliplet, and drawing on a lot of APIs to be able to improve that. So, if you do it well, prepare for rapid success, and I think that's where we are at the minute. We're just getting to that point where there's a lot of focus now on what we can deliver, both internally and outside of that, and it's starting to take off with us. So I think I'm there. I didn't look at the time, so I'm not sure how well I did for time.
Does anybody have any questions for Terence?
Just a few comments, actually.
Yeah.
I think that journey is a very interesting one, because I can see we've gone to some of that, but there's still a lot for us to go to. I think the interesting point for me is the inclusion of the forms, which kind of makes sure that allows you to do a lot more apps, but then again, the integration of the APIs.
Yeah.
So you're integrating a lot of your business APIs now into Fliplet directly.
Yeah, well, there's one of the 5 apps that was originally built was one we've called My Contacts, which is just our staff directory, but there's a lot more features to that as well as just the directory itself. We've integrated that to our HR system, or at least taken a snapshot of the HR system. So, because of GDPR and security, we can't just plug directly into that, but that's producing the files that we need and automatically refreshing, using Fliplet so that we can find that data, because, as Andrew mentioned before, they have 3 different systems with all their employees, and they're not always necessarily the same, or lawyers change. So we're trying to automate that so that every week or every day, however often we need to, that's automatically refreshed. So there's a couple of different ways we can do it. From our point of view, we've got servers in the background that we can just call upon, or we can just send the data through directly into a Fliplet data source. So it really does depend on the system that you're trying to integrate. And we're pulling and pushing data through Fliplet. So
you mentioned the use of the PDF and the documents that you produce.
PDFs and
Yeah. So is that produced directly from?
You can produce it directly from Fliplet. We've done that with one of the apps. We've just decided that because there's that many, that it's easy to have a service behind the scenes that we can then kind of amend.